This picture, taken at 1:30 in the morning, according to another friend, shows Chelsea still wearing the costume and still at the party. But Chelsea would never make it home.
Okay, is this real life right now? Law enforcement launched an investigation in southeast Michigan. Someone reported that they saw Chelsea walking with a man at 3 p.m.
This composite sketch is immediately drawn up and released.
Halloween can be a very scary time.
It's really very sad. My daughter was taken. If they want the attention, bring my daughter back and you can have all the attention you want.
Starting us off at number 10.
The disappearance of Cindy Song. Cindy was a university student who was doing what any university student would do on Halloween, and that was having fun at a party. She spent the night out with her friends, laughing and hanging out. Then she got a friend to drive her home to make sure that she got back safe. Her friend saw her walking into her apartment building, but that was the last time that anyone would ever see of her. The case was a mystery for a while, but then there was a lead. A man by the name of Hugo Marcus Selinski was suspected in the kidnapping and of this poor girl. People say he worked with an accomplice to pull off this crime. Things really started to heat up when police investigated Selinski's home, and they made a horrific discovery. They found a series of dead bodies in the backyard. One of the craziest parts of the story was when the person was suspected in helping Selinski killed Cindy, they actually showed up dead in Selinski's backyard. Then things got even crazier when Cindy's body was never found amongst the many things that were buried in Selinski's property. This opened everything up, being a mystery once again.
Coming in at number 9, we have the of Taylor Van Dyst. On Halloween night back in 2011, Taylor Van Dyst left a party in Armstrong, Canada, but she never returned home. That was the last time anyone had seen her. What's freaky is that on her way home, she sent a text to her friends saying that she was being creeped on. She was later found dead by the side of railroad tracks. After running tests on the body, DNA of a man named Matthew Forrester was found under her fingernails. He later admitted that he had choked her and hit her on the head 6 times. One of the blows fractured her skull. She passed away a few hours later.
Coming in at number 8 is the murder of Carl Jackson. It's insane to think that something could escalate to this point. Carl Jackson was a simple working man and very young. He was only 21 years old at the time of his. He was driving on Halloween night to go to a party. The thing was, he wasn't even going to party. He was going to pick up his girlfriend's son from the party. This guy was just trying to be a good dude. On his way, there were some teenagers who pulled a Halloween trick on him. They hit his car with eggs, and Jackson was obviously angry about this and got out of his car and started screaming at the kids. This makes perfect sense. They just egged your car, and that can really screw up the paint job. Well, I guess one of these teenagers didn't like that he got mad. I don't know what their thought process was, but after Jackson got back into his car, he walked up and shot Jackson. The teenager was later caught and sentenced. I don't know where you get off. You egged a guy's car, you're in the wrong, and because he gets mad you think you can kill him? I'm so happy this kid got caught.
And coming in number 7, we have Liddell Peoples. Honestly, my favorite part of Halloween has to be the candy. Let me know what your favorite thing to get on Halloween. I hated getting like Diet Coke. Like, it's so heavy, and it's like the first couple houses and you gotta carry that around. Well, there's one person that loves her Halloween candy a little bit too much. In fact, he would kill for it. This is a man named Liddell Peoples. In 2011, people bought himself several bags of sweets to snack on, but one of the bags went missing, and things turned deadly. He started to blame his acquaintance, Maria Adams, thinking she stole the bag. Things got escalated, and he ended up stabbing her multiple times. He was immediately arrested, all because of candy. Is this real life right now? This dude must have a serious sweet tooth.
Making our way down the list at number 6, we have the smiley face murders. It was Halloween night and Christopher Jenkins had just left a party, but was not done celebrating. As a result, he hit up a bar with his girlfriend and friends. But sometime after midnight, Chris became separated from the group and got kicked out of the bar. Since his costume had no pockets, his girlfriend was holding onto his wallet and phone. On top of that, he got a drive to the bar, so he had no way to get home. What happened next? No one truly knows. Chris was missing for 4 months until his body was found floating in the Mississippi River. To this day, his death is undetermined. No one knows what truly happened to him. One theory is that he was the victim of the smiley face murders, a group of killers that target college-age white men. All of these victims are found drowned and with a smiley face graffitied nearby. Even though no smiley face was found, some people think that this was still a possibility. Another theory is that he found out that his girlfriend was cheating on him with a married man and threatened to expose him. In fact, the man she was cheating on him with was a police officer. So as a police officer, covering up is on the easier side. Who knows? This case is still a huge mystery though.
Coming in at number 5 is the Pasadena gang shootings. Members of the Bloods wanted to settle a beef in Pasadena and thought that Halloween night would be the perfect opportunity to get the revenge. They drove up on a group of teenagers who were walking out of a party and they started firing into the crowd. People scattered, but these Bloods members were still able to hit several people in the crowd. After the dust settled, 3 people were injured and another 3 were killed. The police investigated after everything was said and done, and it turned out that these gang members actually hit up the wrong party. So these guys rolled up and shot dead a bunch of teenagers who didn't have anything to do with anything they were doing. It's very sad to think about.
In our 4th spot, we have the Angry Marine. Back in 2012 on Halloween night, Daniel Priority, a US Army veteran, was sitting in his wheelchair waiting in line at a restaurant. He was wearing his old Army uniform as he had done every day on Halloween, but 22-year-old Christopher Dabney, a US Marine, thought that Daniel's uniform and wheelchair were fake. He thought that his costume were making fun of injured Army veterans. Well, this enraged him and he ended up punching him twice, knocking him out of his wheelchair completely. It wasn't until later he realized, oh crap, like he's not getting up. I think it's a real situation happening. He definitely needs the use of his wheelchair. I mean, yeah, you messed up big time.
In our 3rd spot, we have Peter Fabiano. Back in 1957, 30-year-old couple Peter and Betty Fabiano had just got into bed when they heard the doorbell ring. Thinking that it was more trick-or-treaters, Peter grabbed a bowl of candy and opened the door. But standing at the door was a woman wearing a mask. She shot Peter in the chest and fled the scene. Later, it was revealed that a woman named Joan Rabble was responsible for this murder. Joan apparently was having a relationship with Peter's wife, Betty. Peter realized his wife was having an affair, and so Betty called it off with Joan. Joan then convinced another woman, Goldine Pizer, to shoot Peter for her. They were both eventually charged with second-degree murder and were sentenced to 5 years to life in prison.
Coming in at number 2 is dressing the part. Back in 2013, Anthony Seabury would be shot and killed by someone who seemed to be a random individual. A few people saw the murder take place, and what made this grab headlines wasn't so much that it happened on Halloween, but that it happened on Halloween and that the killer was apparently wearing a mask from the horror movie Scream. It's thought that the killer could have been someone who fantasized about murder from watching horror movies, and when Halloween came around, he saw this as the perfect opportunity to hunt someone down and live out their fantasy. To this day, the person who killed Anthony Seabury has not been caught and could still be on the loose.
And coming in our number 1 spot on this list, we have the Candyman Killer. What a name. Back in 1974, Timothy O'Brien was all ready and excited to go trick-or-treating. He was probably so excited to see the city and get all the candy that he can handle. Little did he know that his dad was evil. Timothy's dad, Ronald, gave him a bunch of candy for him to eat. They were all pixie sticks. You guys remember those things? Those like straw things, you like squeeze it and then down it in like 2 seconds and then you eat like 50 more of them. Sadly, his dad laced them with cyanide. Timothy ate the sticks while he was out trick-or-treating, and he later passed out. An investigation was launched and eventually this was traced back to Timothy's father, Ronald. But now the question stood on why did Ronald poison his own kid? Was it meant for other kids? What on earth would bring a parent to do such a thing if that was his true intent? Ronald O'Brien was so deep in debt that he took a huge life insurance policy out on his kids and planned to kill them off so he can get the money for them. So the intentions was there. I mean, like, there's so many other ways to make money, and of course he got caught and now he's not getting any money.
We have Taylor Van Diest. On Halloween 2011, this 18-year-old headed out to a party. She never came home. She was found with fatal head wounds by the side of a railway. She later died in hospital. She had been texting her boyfriend while walking to her party, and in one of the last few texts she said she was being creeped, basically followed by someone behind her. That someone turned out to be Matthew Forrester. He had intended to assault her but smashed her head in with a flashlight when she fought back. Fortunately, his DNA was found under her fingernails, which did help bring the conviction. Coming at number 9 now, we have poison. On Halloween 1974, 8-year-old Timothy O'Brien from Texas tried some of his trick-or-treat candy. It was a pack of pixie sticks, a powdered candy. He tasted it and he said it was bitter. Then he said his stomach hurt and began vomiting and convulsing in the bathroom. He died on his way to hospital less than an hour after eating that candy. It took the police quite a while, but they eventually found the killer, Timothy's father, Ronald O'Brien. He had laced the candy with cyanide, hoping to kill his own son Timothy, and claimed $30,000 on a life insurance policy he had taken out in the boy's name. He was found guilty of and executed 10 years later. Next up at number 8 now, we have Yoshihiro Hattori. In 1992, this 16-year-old Japanese exchange student was living in Baton Rouge. He was invited to a Halloween party on October 17th. He arrived at the wrong house and rang the doorbell. After no answer, he and his friend started walking back to their car. That's when the owner of the home, Rodney Pierce, opened the door armed with a Magnum revolver. Yoshihiro turned around and said, "We're here for the party," as he walked towards him. Rodney told him to not come any closer, and when he still did, he shot him at point blank range, killing him. Incredibly, he was acquitted of murder after his defense team argued he was defending his own home, but he was forced to pay $650,000 to Yoshihiro's family in damages. What do you guys think of this story? I think it's a little bit crazy that he wasn't sent to prison. Coming at number 7 now, we have Chris Jenkins. This 21-year-old was at a Halloween party in a Minneapolis bar in 2002. He never made it home and disappeared that night. 4 months later, his body was found in the Mississippi River, still wearing his Halloween costume. Now, police thought that because he was drunk that night and the cause of death was drowning, it must have been an accident or perhaps a His parents, though, refused to believe this, and in 2006 it was reclassified as a homicide. This brought them no closer, though, to identifying the killer. One theory is that this is part of the smiley face which have involved the death of 40 male college students in the US, all from drowning and sometimes with a smiley face graffiti found near the body. Either way, the case is still unsolved. Okay, at number 5 now, we have Martha Moxley. The night before Halloween 1975, this 15-year-old went to a party. On the morning of Halloween, her body was found under a tree, mangled by a golf club. The case went cold for 25 years until Michael Skakel was charged with her. By that time, he was 40 years old. He was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. A year later, he appealed to the Supreme Court, citing prosecutorial misconduct. He was allowed out on bail in 2013, but in late 2016, the Supreme Court reinstated his conviction. He still pleads his innocence. Next up at number 4 now, we have the roommate. On the night of Halloween 2004, roommates Leslie Mazzara, Adrienne Insogna, and Lauren Mianza went to bed after a quiet night of handing out candy to kids. Lauren woke up at 1 a.m. to the sound of a scuffle in the house. She panicked and ran into her backyard to hide. It was then that she saw a man climb out of a window in the house. She waited for a bit until he was gone and went back upstairs, only to find that her roommates had been brutally. Over 1,500 people were interviewed, including one of their friends, Lily Prudhomme. Now, she was innocent, but her boyfriend, Eric Koppel, was suspicious to say the least, having refused to give a DNA sample to the police. A year after the crime, he finally confessed to the double but gave no reason for why he did it. He is now serving life in prison with no chance of parole. Next up at number 3 now, we have Aaron Thomas. In 2009, 3 teenage girls in Virginia were abducted by a man with a gun on their way home from trick-or-treating on Halloween. It happened as they were crossing a car park. They were taken at gunpoint to a wooded area where 2 of them were. Incredibly, the 3rd girl managed to send a text to her mum giving their location and telling her to call 911 right away. This caused the man to panic and run, but he couldn't hide. It took 2 years, but police finally arrested Aaron Thomas, a man already a suspect in dozens of cases going back over a decade.
Starting us off at number 10 is Costume or Reality. Halloween Day 1957. Betty Fabiano and her husband Peter were winding down and getting ready for bed when the doorbell rang. Despite it being past 11 p.m, they assumed that maybe it was a group of late night trick-or-treaters, and since they had some candy left, and so Peter went downstairs to answer the door and was greeted with a man wearing a mask. Betty heard some muffled voices downstairs, kind of like a man was impersonating a woman's voice, face, then a pop, and then a thumb. She ran downstairs to discover Peter lying on the ground in a pool of blood with a gunshot wound on his chest. He died on the way to the hospital and suspects were hunted down immediately. Now here is like the biggest plot twist of plot twist history. Now the couple had their fair share of trouble, and while separated at one point, Betty started seeing a woman called Joan. That's not the plot twist, by the way. They decided to take another jab at their marriage, and Peter's only condition was that Betty could never see or speak about Joan again, to which she agreed. Joan obviously then had a motive and was questioned, and things she was saying just weren't adding up. She claimed that she was home all night, but neighbors claimed she left on a drive for a very long time. An anonymous tip led the police to the murder weapon, and then the assailant, 40-year-old Goldine Pizer. She admitted to killing Peter under the spell of a woman she was in love with, and that woman was Joan. Now coming in at number 9 is Don't Touch My Candy, Halloween Day 2011. A 55-year-old man residing in Chicago realized at 2:30 p.m. that his bag of candy was missing. Call the police. Now I don't know if that's referring to his bag of candy that he got during trick-or-treating, or the bag he was using to give candy to kids. I mean, you could be 50 and trick-or-treating. I'm not gonna judge you. Who am I to judge you? Either way, suddenly outraged by this realization, the man blamed his neighbor Maria Adams for stealing it, even though she really didn't. The man grabbed a bunch of steak knives from his kitchen and headed to her house, where he ended up stabbing her countless times. Maria desperately tried to defend herself by throwing plates at him, but it was just no use. She was in critical condition by the time she got to the hospital and ended up dying the next morning. The man was charged with first-degree murder and aggravated domestic battery. Can we just take a second, please, to just realize how ridiculous this is? Like, I simply just do not get it. He killed a woman over a bag of candy. Like, unless that bag had the secret of life in it or the elixir of immortality, it's just not that deep. Get a new bag. At number 8 we have The Disappearance, Halloween Day 1955. Mother of 2 Marilyn Damon stopped at a food fair on Long Island to do a quick bit of shopping. She left 2-year-old Stephen and 7-month-old Pamela outside the store and told Stephen to watch his little sister. First of all, a 2-year-old cannot be left alone to watch anyone else. Like, that is still baby as hell. Like, what are you doing? 10 minutes later she came out and both children were nowhere to be found. Freaking the hell out, Marilyn starts looking everywhere and thankfully finds Pamela nearby, still in her stroller unharmed, but Stephen was still nowhere to be found. 5,000 people searched for him the next day, but detectives and police were never able to solve the case or find him. Honestly, I feel bad about it, I really do, but also you can't leave your kids alone ever, especially if they're that young. Like, a 2-year-old can't even defend themselves from anyone, how are they meant to defend their younger sibling as well? Like, Marilyn, you should have known better. 2 years old! What can you even do at 2 years old? Nothing! Can you even walk? No, you probably can. You know what I mean, it's young. Now filling on number 7 slot is The Note, Halloween Day 2012. Now Julie Keith was on her way to Kmart to buy some quick last-minute cheap Halloween decorations in her hometown of Damascus, Oregon. That was a lot to say in one breath. Either way, inside the graveyard kit that she purchased, she found a handwritten letter from an inmate at the Chinese labor camp that had made the kit. The letter pleads for the reader to send it to the World Human Rights Organization because thousands of people were suffering in China. The writer claimed that them, along with a lot of other workers in the Massanjia labor camp, were forced to work 15-hour days with no weekends or holidays. If they refused, they would get tortured or beat and only got paid 10 yuan a month, which is about $1.61 a month. A month! The letter wasn't signed, but Julie did pass it on to the organization, and Kmart launched their own investigation into it as well. Thankfully, months later, the labor camp was exposed and the inmates were freed. Woohoo! We love a happy ending! Now at number 6 is The Prank Gone Wrong, Halloween Day 1998. 21-year-old Carl Jackson was driving through the Bronx with his girlfriend to pick up her son from a Halloween party. While stopped at an intersection, a bunch of teenagers started throwing eggs at his car, and so he got out to confront them. No one's about to throw eggs at me when my girl's in the car. I'll front on them. I'll square up. That's me as Carl. Either way, one of the teens, 17-year-old Curtis Sterling, pulled out a handgun and straight up shot Carl in the head, killing him instantly. And egging people on Halloween is quite a common prank, but it's gone awry so many times. Curtis ended up being sentenced to 20 years in prison, and every year on Halloween he gets a card from Carl's mother saying, "I'm glad you're still there." And honestly, kudos to her, I would do the exact same thing. What a senseless, unnecessary killing. Like, I'm getting mad at this list, I really am. It's pissing me off. Coming in at number 5 is The Mailman, Halloween Day 2012. Halloween is always a lit time. It's very scary to the point some people claim they get scared to death. Exaggeration. Pussies. Now, a mailman in Denver was on his route making his deliveries, and he showed up at one house that had a corpse decoration on its porch. Sort of annoyed at the placement of the decoration, he sort of sidestepped it out of the way to the side and delivered the mail. As he was walking away, he realized it wasn't a decoration from any angle. It was a real man that was dead. Turns out the dead man, Delport, had collapsed and died on his porch when returning from his night shift, but because of the timing of Halloween, it just didn't look sus. Honestly, you guys, imagine dying and someone thinking you're a Halloween decoration and just moving your body to the side. Like, biggest L I'd ever take, and I'm not even bloody alive. That's the biggest L. At number 4 is The Costume Gone Wrong. Wow, I need to think of better names because I already did Prank Gone Wrong. Sorry about that. Either way, Halloween Day 2012. An 8-year-old girl was so excited to dress up for Halloween in her hometown in Beaver County, Pennsylvania. She was at a relative's bonfire that night and went to play on the hillside when her aunt Janet saw her in the bushes. Assuming she was a skunk because of her black outfit, hat, and white tassel, she asked her son to shoot the pest. So Thomas went in and got the gun and shot the girl in the shoulder and abdomen. As soon as they realized the grave mistake that had happened, she was helicoptered to Pittsburgh Children's Hospital straight away. She remained in critical condition but did actually survive. What a close call. Like, oh my god, I would have never been able to live with that if I was Thomas or Janet. Like, killing my relative because I thought they were a skunk? Ugh, that would have been an even bigger L. Such an L. Filling at number 3 slot is Bad Candy, Halloween Day 1974. 8-year-old Timothy O'Brien was going trick-or-treating with his dad and sister in Pasadena, Texas. They got to a house where no one answered the door, and getting impatient, the kids ran off to the next house while their dad Ronald stayed behind. He re-emerged a few minutes later with a few pixie sticks, saying the person did come out and give it to him for his kids and their friends. They went home and Timothy had his pixie stick and started complaining that his stomach was hurting. Then he ran to the bathroom vomiting and convulsing, and eventually went limp in his dad's arms and died on the way to the hospital. Turns out the pixie sticks he had a lethal dose of potassium cyanide in it. The police then went into panic mode trying to locate the other kids that had those same pixie sticks, and thankfully none of the other kids had ended up eating them, but they were all found with enough cyanide in them to kill 3 to 4 adults. In each one, not even all together. Ronald was never suspected until the investigation revealed he was over $100,000 in debt and could never hold down a job. He had 21 in the past few years. 21 jobs? What the hell? Turns out he had taken out a total of $60,000 worth of life insurance on his kids, which his wife was unaware of. He ended up killing his son to get the insurance and gave the candy to the other kids as well, just to lessen suspicion. You are complete and ultimate trash if you murder a family member, especially your own kid. Like, getting triggered. Stop getting triggered. Now at number 2 is Heads Will Roll, Halloween Day 2014. So Halloween decorations are always a good time, and that night a man was seen dragging a headless body out of his apartment and just leaving it on the street. Just casual, really. He came back out a few minutes later with the head and then proceeded to kick it to the other side of the street. And I know you're probably wondering what the hell onlookers thought of this, and most of them just thought it was a prank or that the man didn't want to use the decoration anymore. Either way, it was only an hour or so later when someone actually tried to move the body from the middle of the street did they realize the decoration wasn't a decoration. It was a real decapitated body. Turns out the body was Patricia Ward's, and her murderer was her son, who had a history of mental illness. He decapitated her, left her body on the street, and then killed himself by jumping in front of a train. This just ended well for no one, not Patricia, not her son, and not the person who moved her body. Like, no. Not happily ever after. And finally, at number 1 is The Cradle Snatcher, Halloween Day 1977. George Carter had just put his 19-month-old Nima into her crib in their home in Oklahoma. The next morning, he woke up to find the child missing from her cradle, despite all the windows and doors being locked. It's believed the abductor was hiding in her closet that night and stuck the child out when the parents fell asleep. A month later, a group of kids playing in an abandoned house 4 blocks away from the Carter home were horrified when the decomposed body of an infant came tumbling out of the house house's fridge. That child ended up being Nima, but it doesn't even end there. Now, before the Carters lived in that house, it was home to another family that had 2 twin daughters. The year beforehand, the 3.5-year-old girls were stolen and lured out of their house in broad daylight. They were taken to a house by their frequent babysitter, 17-year-old Jacqueline Rubidoux, who told them to get in the fridge and that their aunt would come get them later for some ice cream. A few days later, cries were heard from the fridge by a few children playing in the house next door, so they went inside the house to find out what it was. One of the children opened the fridge door to find Tina jumping out at them. She had managed to stay alive by breathing through a hole in the fridge, but her twin had died from asphyxia. And you know who else called on Jacqueline to watch their child? Nima's parents. Tina even told officers that Jackie Boo was the one who took them to the house, but it failed to lead to a conviction because there was no physical evidence, despite her being shady as hell and the child literally identifying her. But let's just not believe her, shall I? Let's just not believe her.